Hello and welcome for all of you who are watching. You're tuned into TMH as we present you our daily English news. Our headlines for today: residents of Tigrai in western Tigray say Ethiopian forces and their allies committed unspeakable atrocities within their village. Over 200,000 IDPs from Shararo and Tigray region are said to be in an extremely bad situation, and the UN report warns about a Rwanda-style genocide happening in Tigray, Ethiopia. As we move on to our main updates for today, residents of Tigrai in western Tigray say Ethiopian forces and their allies committed unspeakable atrocities within their village. Timnit Bayru has details from Tigray TV.
Massacres, rape, abductions, and looting have been the main features of the genocidal war on Tigray. The following is a testimony of the residents of Tigrai, a village in western Tigray that has been under the hostile occupation of the Ethiopian forces and the Fano vigilante group for more than a year. The village has recently been captured by the Tigray armed forces after the resumption of the war on Tigray by the Ethiopian government and its allied forces on 21st of August 2022. The residents say that many people from their neighborhood were murdered in their homes for the reason that they are Tigrayans.
Many elders, even older than 85 years, were murdered at their bed, and some of them were even killed, and their neck was hanged upon their door front as a flag. They stabbed many nuns under their breast and left them there to die. Their action clearly proved that they want to exterminate the people and take away the land. Elders were gunned down, stabbed by a knife at their home while they were praying. There also are abducted people. They are lost from their neighborhood, and we have no idea where they are now. What the invaders did to this village is beyond description.
According to the residents, not only did allied invaders kill many innocent lives, but also slaughtered many animals brutally.
During the last 2 weeks, 80 livestock that belonged to the neighborhood were slaughtered in a brutal way and taken away by the invading forces.
Last year, elderly people were killed, our livestock slaughtered, and our donkeys were killed.
As the atrocities committed in different parts of Tigray keep unfolding, revealing terrifying stories of violence, the question remains, how many lives would be enough to wake up the world for action?
IDPs from Shararo in the Tigray region are said to be in an extremely bad situation. BBC reported, quoting the international humanitarian workers who wanted to remain silent and anonymous, that the IDPs, mostly children, women, and elderly, have no access to food, water, and are sleeping under big trees. And according to local administrators in OSHA, 210,000 people have been displaced from their homes in Shararo as a result of the ongoing fighting there. Many civilians, including Eritrean refugees, have also been targeted and killed by these shellings that are coming from Eritrean forces as well. As we move on to our next news, the International Diabetic Federation report ongoing war has led to shortages of life-saving drugs in Tigray region's biggest hospital. And what the head of the International Diabetes Federation has branded a humanitarian crime, medics at the Eider Special Referral Hospital, the biggest hospital in Tigray, warn that they have already run out of all kinds of life-saving medicines and have only a few weeks' supply left. There's really another sort of humanitarian crime happening, said Andrew Bolton, who's also the professor of medicine at the University of Manchester, said even at times of war, there are agreements that essential medication should go through to the population, and this appears not to be occurring at the moment, and the best evidence that they have, he noted. Andrew Bolton called on Abiy Ahmed's government to take urgent action, and that insulin and other essential supplies should be able to get into the Tigray region. Doctors at Eider Hospital said that they have days' supply left of insulin as the resumption of fighting between the rebels and the Ethiopian government troops once again cut off supplies to the region completely. Now, with fighting once again raging and both sides blaming the other for the breaking of the truce, humanitarian officials say that they have been unable to get fresh supplies of either food or medicine into the Tigray region for over a month now. The region remains largely cut off from the rest of Ethiopia without any basic services such as electricity, communications, or even banking. A doctor recounting the plight of patients said that they're coming from very far places. Transport is not easy whatsoever, and so when they do reach here, they tell them that there's no insulin, and they are heartbroken and they start to cry. The doctor said he was scared that the Eider Hospital would see a repeat of what last year with supplies into Tigray were stopped for months. We will see patients dying, falling in the streets, he said. People with type 1 diabetes require daily insulin to control their blood glucose level, and without this, their conditions can rapidly prove fatal. Bolton has written to the Ethiopian Health Minister, Lia Tadessa Gabramedhin, urging her to end the ongoing regulatory and security obstacles that are endangering the lives of the many thousands of people living with chronic and non-communicable conditions, including diabetes. More than 6,000 people were being treated for type 1 diabetes throughout the region before the war began, about 2,500 of them at Eider Hospital. In the letter seen by The Guardian, Bolton urges the government to fully comply with international law and ensure the necessary humanitarian access to support vulnerable populations within the Tigray region. And he also said that the outlook for type 1 diabetes patients in Tigray was terrible as we used to see it in the 19th century before the discovery of insulin. UN reports warns that Rwanda-style genocide is taking place in Tigray, Ethiopia. The Ethiopian government has been highly resistant to any investigations of judicial process as it has been implementing a siege regime and using starvation as a weapon of war. Timnit Bayro has more on the report by Nation Africa.
Africa and the world are staring at a genocide in the Tigray region of Ethiopia similar to that of Rwanda in 1994. UN investigators, local regional behaviors have warned. A report from the United Nations Internal Commission of Human Rights Experts on Ethiopia released at the UN Assembly on Thursday reveals that rights violations have been committed since fighting erupted in Tigray in November 2020. The report concludes that there are reasonable grounds to believe that violations such as extrajudicial killings, rape, sexual violence, and starvation of the civilian population as a method of warfare have been committed in Ethiopia since the 3rd of November 2020. The Commission finds reasonable grounds to believe that in several instances these violations amount to war crimes and crimes against humanity.
We have reasonable grounds to believe that many of these acts amount to war crimes. We have also reasonable grounds to believe that the federal government and its allies have committed crimes against humanity in Tigray region. Some of these crimes are ongoing.
The continued blockade of the Tigray region by ENDF that has blocked access to essential services such as food, healthcare, telephone, banking, and restricting humanitarian assistance and the shelling of farmlands have left more than 20 million people in need of assistance and protection, the investigators said. The UN Commission was convinced that the blockade was deliberate and that the denial of food and healthcare to the Tigray population violates the prohibition against the use of starvation of civilians as a method of warfare, as well as the obligation of each party to a conflict to allow and facilitate the delivery of impartial humanitarian relief. UN Chairperson of Ethiopia Commission, Beti Murungi, describes the humanitarian crisis in Tigray as shocking, both in terms of scale and duration. The widespread denial and obstruction of access to basic services, food, healthcare, and humanitarian assistance is having a devastating impact on the civilian population, and we have reasonable ground to believe that it amounts to crimes against humanity, she said. In an attempt to uncover what is going on in Tigray, our region closed to the local and international media since the war started. Notion Africa on Thursday hosted a Twitter space discussion with researchers, human rights activists, the media, and security experts on the challenges facing Ethiopia. Since the war resumed on August 24th, after 5 months of a humanitarian truce, most of the speakers concurred that the world does not know the exact suffering of the people of Tigray. What the world is listening to is basically from the government side, which exposes only what it believes favors them. Not much is known about the war in Tigray, said Basha Desta, a Tigrayan human rights activist. For 2 years, the people of Tigray have experienced intense war of genocide waged against them by the federal government, the Eritrean army, and the local militias from Amhara. Basha Desta and the Tigray people are fighting to defend themselves and their survival, which they are entitled to. According to Maza Gabramedhin, an independent human rights researcher and advocate of the federal government under the Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, initially allowed international journalists into Tigray, only to kick them out after they exposed widespread human rights violations. The government has intimidated both local and international media by insisting that the Tigray region is a war zone and that they could not guarantee their safety. What we are seeing is an intended genocide, where Eritrean forces have joined hands with the federal government in an effort to exterminate the people of Tigray, Maza said. She added, they now want to invade all parts of Tigray and are using drones to attack even hospitals and kindergartens, on top of the hate speech that is being spread around against the people of Tigray, including on national television. She argued that the government used the 5-month humanitarian truce to regroup. Eritrea has re-entered the war after allegedly withdrawing last year, but experts say its forces never never actually left the Tigray region. There are questions about the real interests of Asmara in the Ethiopian civil war. Some analysts believe that Eritrean President Isaias Afwerki is taking advantage of the situation to take revenge against the people of Tigray, who by the Ethio-Eritrean War of 1998-2000 frustrated his ambition of lording over Ethiopia and the Horn. When Dr. Abiy made peace with Eritrea after coming to power in 2018, many of the Eritreans saw this as an ominous sign, said William Davidson, a senior researcher on Ethiopia for the International Crisis Group. Despite the release of the UN Commission report, Davidson said the Ethiopian government is highly resistant to any investigation or judicial process, given that the government has been implementing a siege regime and using starvation as a weapon.
Welcome back, and thank you, Timnith Bayer, for those further details. As we move on to our final update for today, in related news, the Ethiopian government representative at the UN Human Rights Council blamed the EU for extending the mandate of the International Human Rights Experts Group. He goes to say, "We never expected the EU would continue making such an extreme push to renew the mandate of the Commission and made all of the opportunities to a futile exercise." The Eritrean government representative in the Council, on his part, "We strongly reject the recommendation and the malicious trend to link and refer the human rights session to the UN Security Council." That concludes our news for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye.